How a New York Jets tackle came to invest in FreightWaves. Where's Bezos? Top 5 places Amazon HQ2 will land, according to Sonar. FMCSA opens debate on HOS regulation revisions. And intermodal trucking takes up a fight against U.S. tariffs aimed at chassis. I'm JP.
And I'm Chad.
And we discuss all these topics and more on this week's episode of What the Truck. What you got there, Chad?
Hey, I've got a very interesting IPA. It's kind of my new thing, JP. This has been the summer of the IPA.
Yeah, weirdly, right? It's not really it's not like a summer beer, but
right. And I didn't expect it, but it's like the pendulum has swung back. I was doing all these Belgians and all these saisons and stuff.
I didn't really like the saisons.
You didn't?
No offense.
I mean, which ones? Not the ones I made. I hope you're not.
Oh no, I loved those.
Oh yes, well, of course. No, this IPA is terrific. It's from the brewery is from St. Petersburg, Florida, and if I may read the label briefly here, sorry, Barry. I'm literally reading the label. It is, it's their benchmark beer. It's, kind of a medium-bodied ale. It's got, it's got this earthy pine, hop feel, but it's got the notes of tropical fruit. In a way, how can you go wrong?
Yeah, I mean that's what people always say about
it's a common thing. It's like you hear pine, you hear tropical.
Just
fruit.
Like on my favorite beer and constant companion, Bell's Two Hearted has hints of grapefruit. And I know, 25 weeks in, I've never switched it up except for, I think, the Foster's in the Grumpy Pete.
About that, yeah.
But, I have to say, for me, this is a richly layered experience of drinking Bell's Two Hearted. I go back to Michigan. I go back to grad school. I'm immersed in a whole nother world. I think about the past, decade of my life. It's more complex than it may appear on the surface.
Yeah, because on the surface, it's just one hop, dude. That you're just doing. It's like a monotone. You're just hitting it over and over and over. Okay. No, but I respect that. You find something on the menu you like, you stick with it. This is a fun consumption. A lot of good consumption to be had with our headlines of the week.
Yeah.
Well,
let's get into it. I was. John Kingston, our executive editor, is actually in town this week, but he got to go to Jets camp. For some reason, he's a New York Jets fan.
Long-suffering.
No shade, but that's cool. I guess it builds character. But he got to go to Jets camp and interview left tackle Kelvin Beachum, who is something of a tech investor, right?
Yeah, apparently so. Beachum is a fascinating story. He's, he plays, of course, he plays tackle, and we're also actually starting with football because it's football season, and we thought we'd start with a human interest piece related to football. And he's an investor in FreightWaves, and I find it sort of metaphorical that he plays the second most important position on offense, which is, the one protecting the blind side of the quarterback.
Yes.
But he's Kelvin Beachum. He's played tackle for, I believe he was drafted by the Steelers, and he's also played for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he looks to start for the Jets, a team that hasn't won a Super Bowl since the first inauguration of Richard Nixon.
Wow.
It's been a while.
That's 1968-ish.
When Broadway Joe guaranteed that he would win and the AFC prevailed.
Oh yeah. So I guess that that would have been in the January of '69.
So Beachum, basically began. He started with some interest in startup investing. It was sparked by a meeting he had with John Donovan, the CEO of AT&T. And apparently, he was just talking to him. He said, Kelvin, I want you to think about the way you're pursuing your life. what are your next business endeavors and you got to be thinking about your next chapter. And Beecham said that, this was a transformative moment, that conversation with him. Basically, I think the long and short is that, he's been introduced to lots of people in the VC community, entrepreneurs, operators, with some hot tech companies. He likes to invest in not the early stage startups, but he likes to invest in startups that have already, proven a little bit.
So kind of like Series A rounds.
Exactly, the Series A, B, C, and D rounds. Such as the article says.
I would think that like super early stage, like the angel round, something like that,
sounds high risk.
High risk, probably too much research involved. You're kind of doing it on your own. It makes sense for him to, look at what other people are doing to, kind of join the party and get a piece of the action.
Yeah, and he, had an interview, with our executive editor Kingston, who also got this great quote. Beecham said, "Football has done a phenomenal job in introducing me to the VC world," and I think he also just means he's also like, I think the experience of the OTAs and the training and all that it requires to be a left tackle in the NFL have kind of disciplined him.
I have to say, I hear more and more stories about, especially offensive linemen being kind of like the smartest people on the field. And I think the other piece of this that's really interesting is that it seems like the NFL is really trying to do more for the athletes, help facilitate sort of their growth as business people, trying to break the stereotype of
for sure
the sort of short career. Dude who splurges all of his money, doesn't know how to manage it, ends up broke 5 years later, working at whatever, like a used car lot or something like that. Like by facilitating these relationships, letting them deploy their capital in productive ways, I think it's really cool, and it's kind of. Hopefully a page is turning for all professional athletes.
Yeah, well, and for this 29-year-old, I'm really impressed myself. He says he doesn't want to just sit around and watch TV all day when he's done. He wants to keep his mind moving. And Beecham has also spent a great deal of time promoting, STEM schools, as well as opportunities for African Americans and other minority communities in numerous locations.
That's so cool.
A really impressive human being. And makes me want to cheer for the Jets and the AFC a little bit more, and just a cool story.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if you're listening to this, Kelvin, have a great season.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be tuning in. I don't think they know who their quarterback's going to be yet, but at least he will be protected by a smart dude.
So tell me about this Amazon HQ2 story. I mean, if you look at mainstream media outlets, everyone is all a Twitter with speculation about where Jeff Bezos is going to dump, billions of dollars of money, tens of thousands of people. What's that going to look like? What kind of space does he need? What kind of public schools does his workforce want? What's the infrastructure going to look like? The IT? How do we make sense of it all, Chad?
Well, we can't get into Jeff Bezos' head, and that's really what we're trying to do here.
His gleaming head.
So, well, he's very handsome. I think he's a very handsome, symmetrical-looking guy. So, but it's sort of like it's sort of like looking at trying to think of it's like instead of where's Waldo, I thought where's Bezos.
Yeah.
And so
explain the methodology.
There is a bit of a methodology here. While it's pure speculation, isn't it fun to think about where Jeff Bezos might be? Well, first of all, Amazon, a couple of months ago, they said that around this time, 2 months later, that they would be revealing the next location of the HQ2, but they're being very tight-lipped about when the announcement is coming, which to me means that Bezos is still trying to figure it out himself. They're looking at things. Overall, we do know this about the methodology. because this much Amazon has told us of their 4 main criteria. The metropolitan area must have more than 1 million people. It must have a stable and business-friendly environment. There must be urban or suburban locations with the potential to attract and retain strong technical talent. And the communities must be thinking big and creatively when considering the locations and real estate options. So, with that methodology and using our fancy sonar data.
Now, I'm curious to see what, if anything, Sonar has to say about this, but go
Sonar has a lot to say about it,
All
JP. Why? Because it's the OTMS. Right?
Ooh.
Tell us what the OTMS is.
It is the market share.
The outbound tender market share.
Yes, it's what proportion of overall loads being tendered, sort of per
100. Yeah, It's a percentage.
It's a percentage, but it's
the
divided.
Sum of all the market.
There's 135 freight markets that Sonar tracks, and you can look at their share of shipment volumes.
And to me, yes, very good. And to me, it's kind of a new feature that we've installed into the Sonar system, and it's a very good leading indicator to me of from a strategic freight perspective, which to me, JP, I don't know. I think it's the overall single most important factor. So
explain your thinking here, because from what I understand, HQ2 is not going to be a giant distribution center, right? It's going to be offices of tech people. But is the idea that, if we located in a place that's already a logistics hub, there will be the kinds of people that Amazon wants to hire? Is that kind of
that is our thinking?
Okay.
I mean, without being able to get literally into Jeff Bezos's head and not knowing where he if he lives in a place, does that mean he's ruling it out, as some people are suggesting? I mean, he's got places in every like all kinds of cities,
right.
But so what we did was we looked at strategically what were the freight volumes coming out of these places with our OTMS sonar data, and we took into consideration a few other factors about business friendly environment, cost of real estate, location geographically, and we came up with the top 5.
Hit me.
All right. And there's only one that I'll tell you in a minute that I feel like I might have overlooked a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm just going ahead and saying that. I'm laying it out there.
Interesting. Okay.
But the top 5, JP, would you like me to tell you the 5th one first, or do you want me to just go right for the gold?
I think ascending order.
Ascending order.
Yes.
Okay. Just the way I wrote it. Number 5 we're saying is LA. Why LA? Well, we're going to give LA some credit. There's no way they're putting it on the Pacific Coast, man.
Yeah, because aren't they already in
But
Seattle?
at the same time, they're already in Seattle. They're already on the left coast. But LA is great for plenty of reasons, not the least of which are the sheer number of locations they submitted. 9. LA submitted 9 locations as potential. They have a major airport and something that you've written on a lot.
The 2 biggest ports in North America.
Yes. I think of it as being the largest overall port.
Yeah.
North
Well,
America.
it's number 1 and number 2, and they're right next to each other.
Nevertheless, no matter how you slice it, I mean, it's the historic fires. They're not going to do it because of the fires. Just kidding. So? No, it's not because of that. It's just
okay. I was like, what?
It's because you're on Pacific time to anywhere. I just don't feel like the fires could be helping. But nevertheless, the sonar data says it's the second highest amount of loads of our top 5.
I don't think of California as being particularly business friendly.
And
I think of as high tax. I think of high real estate prices.
Yep.
I think of really bad air pollution. I think it's crowded. It's hard to build houses. Anyway, so moving on to 4.
Austin, strangely enough.
Austin is interesting.
Austin is interesting, but from a freight perspective, and according
crowded,
to our
it's
sonar
expensive,
data, it is the lowest of the top five in terms of that. But it's got this diverse hip vibe that a lot of tech talent
University
would love.
town.
Yes.
It's culturally distinct is one way to put it from most of the rest of Texas.
In a lot of ways, it is similar to Dallas in terms of those two. It's in terms of some of the freight move. There's more freight coming out of Dallas, and Dallas has a major airport, but they don't have the diversity. But in terms of all the taxes and the state benefits, it kind of ranks very similarly.
So it's going to be high property taxes, but who knows? Who knows what the incentives that will be offered to Amazon? I mean, I'm sure they're rolling out the red carpet for this facility.
You know what? I'm calling it right here, even though I put it in the top 5. Austin ain't happening.
Okay.
All right, just calling it right here. Freight movement way too low.
Okay. What's number 3?
All right, Chicago. Even though very non-business friendly, JP. Non-business friendly,
but
Illinois.
It's one of the nation's biggest freight hubs.
Totally.
Ever since
I think it's the
railroads were built to bring the wheat to the futures markets and the stockyards and yada yada.
Look
the
at
pork
you
bellies
whipping out
and
the knowledge.
people in the Chicago Board of Trade screaming about pork bellies. It's there's something about the movement of goods and all of the people that make that happen. In Chicago.
And there's some heritage there, too. After all, Sears and Montgomery Ward were the Amazons of their day.
Yeah.
And the sonar data, like we just said, lots going on there. We're putting that number 3. Number 2, JP, is Atlanta. Hot Atlanta. I'd love to see them in hot Atlanta.
Yeah.
They actually won in terms of
just add another 50,000 people to the highways outside of Atlanta.
Right. What could go wrong? Nothing. Like, you just basically you might as well just sit on the freeway on 400, right?
Yeah, I mean, my Amazon Prime shipments are going to be even later than they already are, Jeff Bezos.
Let's hope they'd solve a few of those things. One of the things Atlanta has for it that we overlooked, I think. They have an impressive rail system, and don't forget, as we've covered, the Georgia Ports Authority and the Mesa mega rail terminal. Man, that is going to open up some serious capacity.
True.
There's going to be a lot going on there.
All right, take us all the way to the top.
Northern Virginia.
Interesting.
Is the number 1.
I kind of see that.
You know what? To me, it is either Northern Virginia or Atlanta, Georgia.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Northern Virginia.
You've got a huge professional community. It's close to Washington. You think about
the strategic positioning.
He already owns the Washington Post.
He's got that, and if it's not DC proper, but Northern Virginia, it's still cool enough potentially to attract the talent.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the real estate's not as ridiculous. And then consider these
and as long as you don't have to get on the Beltway to get to work, your people are going to be pretty happy with you.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the megalopolis of DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York in one direction.
Boston.
You have the should we include them? Yeah. You have the access to the Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago corridor, and you have the even the Charlotte and Atlanta corridor. So
I think
that people really smart.
I think people love Washington D.C. It's very diverse. There's people from all over the world. The restaurant scene has exploded, and I also really think that Amazon needs to be close to the federal government. There are a lot of regulations kind of at stake that could threaten their business. There are different kinds of tax models, different kinds of antitrust things, and I think they you know what I mean? They need to get close to the agencies that are regulating them.
Wow, man, what an insight. Do you want to, we don't have to, but I know a lot of people had talked a little bit about Denver, Miami, Raleigh, Nashville, or Boston as other contenders, and I didn't even put them on the top 5. So do you want me to tell you why not?
No freight.
Oh, what? No freight for whom?
Those other cities? I don't know.
Well, I just didn't know if you wanted me to...
Find me a truck driver that wants to go into Boston and
Yeah, Boston, especially when compared to Northern Virginia, is more expensive, more congested, and not as accessible to the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the ones though that is a little overlooked, that I will say, like that a lot of people talked about on the Facebook comments that I can kind of see. I still don't believe it's gonna make it.
What?
Kansas City.
What about St. Louis?
I mean, I don't know. What about?
Okay, to me, those cities are indistinguishable.
Yeah,
I'm not from. I'm a southerner.
I just drove
I'm not
through
from the
there.
Midwest. It's all kind of the same.
They're kind of on opposite ends of the Kansas continuum.
Right. But would you even know if you were in one city or the other? I mean, I guess
now let's
there's
be
okay.
nice
Sorry.
to these cities. Yes, I did know the difference. One has an arch.
Yeah.
Okay, it's got a big arch. It's the gateway to the west. That one. That's the St. Louis.
Isn't that
one.
elevator kind of scary? The way it like kind of goes back. It
is. It's creepy.
It's freaky,
actually.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a couple more pretty important stories to cover.
All right, enough speculation.
Let's look at our managing editor Brian Straight's article about the FMCSA's proposed revisions to hours of service regulations.
This is a significant story.
It's a really big deal.
They're finally listening to the industry, and the carriers, and the owner-operators.
Yeah, Administrator Martinez has been sort of on a listening tour. He's done, at different industry events. It seems like they're getting the message. They're trying to build more flexibility into these regulations
by opening up. They're right now. They're on a 30-day. It's a 30-day listening tour.
Yeah, when they propose these regulations, they kind of have this like mandated public period process for comment where I'm pretty sure the feedback is going to be positive if truck drivers are the ones talking to them. But
I think one of the big things of it all is that they're looking at extending the 14-hour on-duty limitation by up to 2 hours.
Yeah, up to 2 hours.
That's significant.
If you encounter adverse driving conditions. And I think it's going to be really important how that language is interpreted, whether it means detention time, getting held up at a dock, whether it's traffic, weather, etc.
Yeah, is detention time considered an adverse driving condition?
Right.
I don't know.
That could be huge. I think the other really big one is going to be the split sleeper flexibility. That's huge. And people have been talking about that for a long time. The FMCSA has done a number of studies on this to make sure, basically hooking up drivers to all different kinds of sort of like biometric kind of devices to make sure that like if you break up your sleep, you're still getting the rest you need to drive safely, all that kind of thing. But I was just talking to our chief analytics officer, Dean Croak,
and he knows a lot about sleeping.
And he estimated that based on some prior studies that he had done for a fleet risk advisors company that he worked with, that the sum total of these regulations could add basically an hour to an hour and a half of rolling time on average for truck. And if you look at HOS, like actual utilization, average drivers are getting about 6.8 hours of actual driving. Long haul drivers are another hour above that. So you'd still be, by opening this up, you would still be within that 11-hour window. But we're talking. Wait.
They're getting 6.8 or 7.8 hours per
of actually moving down the road, generating
I had not heard that.
Revenue.
Wow, that is kind of shitty.
So adding an hour to that is basically giving every driver in the industry a 15% raise. So it's massive. It's
Who
huge.
would possibly be against this?
LTL carriers.
If the FMCSA themselves are putting this out there, like a safety organization.
The railroads, LTL carriers, anyone who competes with truckload providers.
But just because of competition, it's not because of like the safety.
No, because the railroads take advantage of tight capacity and truckload by by taking freight, but more importantly by pumping their prices just because they can. So anything that alleviates that pressure, that makes trucking more competitive, increases the capacity, the ability to move more freight further, faster, cheaper. it's not going to be, they're probably going to start whining about safety and yada, yada, yada. We'll see.
Right. Good point. That's probably exactly what will happen in our fragmented logistics industry with competing interests.
And speaking of competing interests, our last story is a tariff story, but it's about a specific kind of good that pertains to our industry. So originally, the Trump administration wanted to put tariffs on intermodal container boxes, right?
Right.
And then he was informed that since there are no American manufacturers of intermodal container boxes, it doesn't really help American industry to do that.
It's all a part of the ready, aim, fire
strategy.
Fire,
aim. Ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, aim.
Exactly.
Okay, not a lot of aiming.
Right. So he decided, he's like, okay, well, how can I put a tariff on this? Okay, we'll put a tariff on intermodal chassis. Basically the kinds of trailers that you set these container boxes on top of. That's where they're going with this. And obviously intermodal trucking doesn't want this. They don't want this arbitrary 25% increase in the price of their equipment.
Purportedly this is, the tariffs are, of course, what's the point of them? They're aimed to help U.S. businesses, but many businesses, as the article says, are opposed to this.
Right. I mean, what's the point of putting a tax on basically American commerce just to help these niche chassis manufacturers?
Especially when
it hurts so many more people than it helps. You know what I mean?
And especially when
it's like adding friction to the goods economy.
Well, and I think
the supply chain.
In the larger picture too, the tariff thing is just a back and forth. It's retaliatory. Who has the most leverage to be able to jack up the prices? And I guess Trump feels like he's going to somehow win this game, but carriers are against it. They want to stop the tariffs. I think in the article, Andre Rubio of a California-based transport said there are just too many factors already imposed on the trucking community with dray rates unlikely to support additional costs.
Right.
So basically,
the poor truckers are the ones that have the most exposure to this tariff. It's the guys who are, basically moving stuff off the docks into local DCs and making these short haul runs, basically 18 hours a day, already busting it as hard as they can to make a buck, and this just makes it harder.
And in the midst of all the crises that Trump is currently facing, I think China is visiting this very week, and they're going to be discussing the tariff things.
Yeah, and a new round of mutual retaliatory $16 billion of tariffs just hit on the day they start their talks.
Right. And so naturally, Trump says that he does not see there will be any quick detente reached between the U.S. and China.
Right. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for the headlines of the week, right? It's time for Big Deal, Little Deal.
What's the deal with you? I don't know. What is the deal with you this week?
It's been busy, man.
It's hard to get into JP's head.
Great. Yeah. Well,
while it's hard to get into Bezos's head, it's even more of a mystery to penetrate JP's.
All right.
But hey, in light of that, let's play this. I will begin. We'll begin here momentarily. I hope the timer is going. And JP, are you ready?
Ready.
Ready or not, here we come. Trident Transport, a young brokerage, killing it in Freight Alley. Big deal or little deal?
It's a huge deal. Freight Brokerage is the fastest growing company in Chattanooga. They've been doubling their revenue every year since they were founded.
Maersk offers trans-Pacific container space on new exchange as peak season hits. Big deal or little deal?
It's pretty interesting. I would say it's a big deal. It might be customer service more than anything else, but I'll be interested to see how this capacity trades.
BiTA board member UPS awarded patent for blockchain-related application. Big deal or little deal?
I think it's a little deal. These big companies do a lot of patent shopping, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a viable product in mind.
Uber Freight launches solution for shippers to speed load tendering process. Big deal or little deal?
Little deal, although it has, it's an incremental change. Uber Freight's trying to improve its platform and offer and automate more of the services provided by traditional brokerages. Okay, PepsiCo aims for DIY beverages with acquisition of SodaStream. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal. Carbonated still has a place, and this diversifies their portfolio.
Freight.tech announces Innovation Lab at FreightWaves 18. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal. Freight.tech offers unparalleled advantages to early-stage startups across logistics.
Slink inks global partnership with FreightWaves. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal. The deal moves the logistics industry forward with blockchain, education, and technology.
Legalizing cannabis would not make it cheaper than before. Big deal or little deal?
Legalizing would be a big deal. The industry brought in $6.2 billion last year.
Oh, we got it!
I think we did it again. We may need to up the ante and try for 10 stories in two. Bad idea.
That's
we've
simmer down.
Okay, well, I'm just getting excited.
I know you're on a high.
We're
rein it back in.
We're doing it again. So self-congratulatory, aren't we? All right, good times. Great to be here with you, and
we'll see you next week.
And that'll do it for the big stories this week. As always, we go into more detail about each of the topics we've talked about today on our website, FreightWaves.com. We will continue to publish this podcast weekly, so be sure to subscribe to What the Truck on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, make sure to leave us a review to let us know what you think of our new podcast.
And if you're interested in freight economics and finance, come to our Market Waves conference at the Gaylord Texan Resort and Convention Center in Grapevine, Texas this November. Visit marketwaves18.com to learn more about this event.
That'll do it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week on What the Truck.